All right, welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, movie critic for movieswithmark.com. So, we are coming to the end of September here, and we've got a few big films to talk about. We obviously got to talk about Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, One Battle After Another, which is coming out this weekend. We'll also talk about the new sports horror film, I guess you want to call it, called Kim, produced by Jordan Peele and directed by Justin Tipping. We'll talk a bit about that, and we'll also talk about a little film called Twinless. It's a little romantic comedy. So, man, we're getting dropped frames here. I'm going to have to, check on that. Looks like getting a few drop frames here. I'll check on it after the stream. But if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies, because we are coming up on award season, and I can already see a few big films coming up on the horizon. We're going to be covering a lot more films on the stream come this fall. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest films, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you are always updated on the latest movies, because there's going to be a lot. It's gonna be like a mess of films coming up here. And also be sure to like this video to make sure that other people know about little films like Twinless and somewhat bigger films like One Battle After Another. I get the feeling it'll be a little bit bigger because it's a Paul Thomas Anderson film in IMAX, which is not something you see every day. Although I kind of like that. I kind of like that with stuff like Beau is Afraid, how we're getting all these these films that have that are more from like auteurs, I guess, for lack of a better term, that actually want to make like a much bigger film, but still have experimentation, which is very much the case here. All right, so I will load up my notes here, and while I am loading that up here, be sure to check out my Patreon as well, which will give you updates on not only the videos but also my movie history books. I'm currently working on a book on banned movies from around the world, so that'll be for patrons who have signed up, they will get a copy once it's released. Thank you, Jesser Beek. One movie.
Eternal,
Plenty.
shiny and chrome.
I'm gonna turn off the alerts. Well, actually, nah, I'll leave them on just in case. Well, I'm debating whether I should leave them on or not for the review, just because I know we're getting a lot of followers right now because of the Shadiversity video. Tell you what, I'll turn them off right now and then turn them back on once we get through that. So in case there's any super chats, I will get to them after we finish. All right, it is a bit loud. Let me turn on the desktop audio there. There we go. It's a little lower now, so it shouldn't protrude that loudly. All right. Let me get up my notes here so that we can talk about One Battle After Another. Okay, let me get the notes up there. Just gotta make sure the camera's in the frame too. Okay, here we go. And up there, how are we on drop frames? Oh, we haven't dropped too many. That's good. Okay. So, without further ado, let's get to One Battle After Another. In 3, 2, 1. So, One Battle After Another is the latest film written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. And this is, I dare say this might be my favorite film of the year, just because this is a film that is so perfectly poignant for this moment in time, for this desire to keep on fighting and for revolution, and without even just explicitly, even though it is reflecting a very familiar type of America, it doesn't specifically bring up the exact politics of our era, but rather more not quite fictionalized, but more of kind of fictionalized enough so that there's definitely a familiar political vibe to it that feels very appropriate, very accurate, and it's just alive and angry. And it's the type of film that you want for this moment in time. You don't want films that just, if they're going to address certain politics like this, to pull their punches. And Paul Thomas Anderson, who's in full control here of this big film, shooting it for IMAX, and it just it comes alive. It feels like that type of cinema that really punches on a hard level. I dare say this might even be my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. So the film, based on a Thomas Pynchon's Vineland novel, which is very Pynchon in the way that it diverts all over the place and just kind of keeps finding weird stuff to do with its characters. It's very much like it's very much. I have not read Vineland, but I have read other Thomas Pynchon novels, and I can see that that level of inspiration here. So the whole film is about it starts by following these two revolutionaries who are played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and Leonardo DiCaprio plays Bob, and the woman he falls in love with, played by Teyana Taylor, is Beverly Hills. And the two of them, they love revolution. They love, raiding immigration camps to like free immigrants. They love blowing up banks and government buildings to make their point clear. And once they finish their job, they immediately go into sex. So like the whole film just starts with like with bangs, like both literal explosive bangs and sexual bangs between these characters, sometimes in the same scene. And what I love about the way that it establishes their characters is that they're already radicalized. They do not set up like, it was these chain of events that, led us to, assembling all these rebels to try to break into immigration camps and fight back against the government. No, they make it pretty clear, why they're radical, and it's easy to understand. They make their little declarations in between their jobs. You can see it there, and man, they love it. They are so horny for each other, and they have such sexual energy that the pursuing character of Colonel Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, with just this perfect, he has like this perfect look of just being constantly frustrated and angry. Even he is like, he can't resist Beverly Hills. The more that he looks at her, he's willing to let her get away with anything so long as he can just, watch her and just be horny for her to a very creepy degree. And it gets much creepier as the film goes on by really hammering home the point that this Lockjaw guy is just a disgusting person. Right from the first scene, the very first scene where the two of them meet in an immigration camp is just, you really hate this guy. You find him just filthy and disgusting, and you can't wait for him to get his comeuppance. So things go awry with the revolution, and there's a whole chain of events that spiral out of control, and it eventually leads to Bob basically trying to flee with his daughter Willow, who grows up to be a 16-year-old played by Chase Infinity. And Willow has kind of grown used to the lifestyle of somewhat living on the lam and, trying to cover her tracks by taking influence from Bob, who still has a little bit of those revolutionary pangs in his personality, but he's also, it's been 16 years and he's kind of fallen out with the group, and he's just he's very weathered and doesn't really feel like he can get back into the swing of things, especially when the revolution comes again, when Lockjaw comes a-knocking. So there's a whole bunch of unresolved elements that he's got to deal with both his wife, who has gone missing, and confessing the truth to his daughter, and coming to terms with how he views revolution, and basically trying to find some way to keep fighting back, because the whole point, I think, of the film is to establish how, keeping up this political fight, it's all about endurance. It's all about hanging in there. And this is the type of film that it sounds very serious, and it does get pretty gritty and brutal at times, but it's also incredibly funny, because this is the type of film that can focus on that desire for revolution and rebellion, but also kind of laugh at how it might fall out of favor and how you might grow weary of it. Because it's, I think probably one of the perfect scenes that encapsulates this is when Leonardo DiCaprio's character of Bob is grown up with Willa, and he's a drunk, he's smoking weed, and the most revolutionary thing that he does is watching Battle of Algiers while smoking weed, which is which is a great reference, because obviously, Battle of Algiers is a highly political film, which undoubtedly had some influence in making one battle after another. But also, you know, there's a lot of people who talk a lot about it and don't really take in its messaging as well. Some people actually look at Battle of Algiers as kind of like getting an idea of terrorism rather than taking any of the political implications away from that type of film. So the fact that it can mock people who do want revolution while still making you care for them a little bit, I think is just great, especially because Bob's character, he basically calls up like this special hotline number that you have to speak in code words, and he's forgotten them all, and he's struggling to just, you know, because he loses his daughter Willa, and he's got to try to find her, so he's getting in contact with all the old rebels, and is just struggling to like remember the code words and figure out what to do, and he's a mess. And it's like you want to laugh at him, but you also feel bad for him too, because he really does want to protect his daughter, and he wants to make the world a better place, and he's just trying to, you know, as the title implies, you know, just get through the next day and fight another battle. And I think there are some like great there is some great comedic relief in the film, specifically in Benicio del Toro's character of Carlos, who plays a local sensei who is and Del Toro just like he effortlessly just like leans into this comedy. Very deadpan, very much in like the same way that he was in like the Venetian Scheme. But he plays a character who's so used to the military rolling in and immigration raids and the calls for like political violence, that when his town starts going to hell and like it starts getting raided by the military, he has a plan in place, and he's so sure that his plan is going to work that he's willing to like, you know, help out Bob in between and have a beer with him while he's in the middle of his own little escape plans. Like, cause I love how like weathered Carlos is, where he's gotten used to the idea of going on the run and, you know, creating diversions and you know, ushering like immigrants away from like ICE agents, and like how he's become so like accustomed to it that he's just like, yeah, it's like this is just what I do. Because at one point, like, Bob is really starting to get back into the swing of things, and he starts going like, yeah, Viva Revolution, and Carlos just like, yeah, I've been doing this the whole time. So that they have a great dynamic. I love their little back and forth, especially how Carlos he's very casual, but he's also doing everything he can to help Bob, in like a very like, you know, like kind of helpful way. Not like he's like some member of a resistance, but just like a pal doing the best that he can for his friend. Like immediately once he helps Bob out with an escape, he's just waiting for him in the car. It's like, hey, I got some beers for you. Hey, where do you need to go? You got to find your daughter? Cool. I'm with you all over. I'm all over this. But there is much more sternness, I think, in another one of Beverly Hills' allies called Deandra, played by Regina Hall, who is she is pretty strict, and she mostly spends most of the film with Willa trying to divulge as much of the information of the past so that Willa has enough strength to go on, while still just, you know, being very hard on this girl, realizing that Willa might not be taking this as seriously as everyone else is, and that she needs to kind of grow up and just realize the danger that she's in, especially with this creep of Lockjaw just coming after them. Which there is, I think, probably the most laughs you will get in this film is from Sean Penn's character with his like dorky ass fascist haircut and his just like his wrinkly face that looks like it's about to pop. And probably the best joke in the film is when he's asked to join this underground fascist group, which has a name so ridiculous that I will not reveal it here. But I will say, when they do reveal it, the name of this underground fascist group and the little chant they have going for it, I struggled to keep my laughter in, and like a lot of people could not hold it. Like they were cracking up at this, and I think that's such like a perfect aspect too, because there are fascist movements like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo movement. They all have like silly, ridiculous, dumb names so that people that they think people will take them less seriously. And I think it's perfectly inserted into this film in like a very clever way. And I think that goes for like just about everything else about this film, is that it feels like it's hitting right on the nail it's hitting the nail on the head of a lot of the political aspects that we experience nowadays without overtly stating, like, who is exactly behind this and what is motivating this specifically in the news. Like, we see it everywhere. And Paul Thomas Anderson is just kind of basically taking the political temperature of this moment and applying it into a film that is very alive and thrilling and action-driven and offbeat and ridiculous and poignant all at the same time. Because the film runs nearly 3 hours, and it kind of breezes by just because you have no idea where the story is going. It feels very much kind of like like more of like an ensemble piece, kind of like like No Country for Old Men, where it's just kind of showing all these different perspectives and how everything starts going awry, and that the best laid plans don't always work out, and it just keeps building on itself in a very fascinating and funny and exciting way that you just can't wait to see where it goes next. So yeah, for almost being 3 hours, it breezed by. And not to mention, oh god, I really love the performance of Chase Infinity playing Willa. I think just like the passionate drive, and I think she's kind of like the key to making this film work. Like, don't get me wrong, Leonardo DiCaprio's performance here is great. I love how he just becomes like a very humiliating figure. Benicio del Toro has a great stoic comedic performance. Regina Hall has a great grit. Teyana Taylor has a sexiness to her. Sean Penn is just a almost cartoonish villain that you love to hate so much. But man, I think Chase Infinity really brings it all together, because it ultimately comes down to her generation being tasked with carrying on the fight. And it's rather charming and very, very hopeful that the film, positions like these characters, like, like Regina Hall's character and Leonardo DiCaprio's character, as wanting to basically give the next generation the tools to keep fighting, because it is a method of because it's all about endurance. If you want to fight fascism, you can't give up. It's going to be hard. And I think, especially with the other, anti-fascist media this year, like Andor, it really stresses how you need to stick with it. And how it's not gonna, you're probably not gonna get like a perfect happy ending to all this, but you do need to keep up that struggle and to keep up that fight and to make sure that the next generation has the tools that they need to keep that fight going as well. I also love the ultimate ending of the film does have another aspect that is worth highlighting, which is that fascists will eat each other if you give them enough time, which I don't really want to reveal specifically what happens to Lockjaw, but they do have a comeuppance for him in the best possible way that highlights how, if you just keep fighting, you'll live to see another day, and you'll live to see your generation keep on going. Whereas the fascists who just like bow to power, they will not go far. They are going to get attacked by each other. They are going to, they're going to stumble. And when they stumble hard and, ultimately ruin their lives. So I love how all these different aspects come together in the film in such like a pitch perfect way. There's never a moment where it feels like they're trying too hard for comedy, or that they're trying too hard for like with like a car chase or a shootout or an explosive scene. It always feels like just the right moments for this type of film to work. Like when there's like a chase through city streets after, an attack on a bank, it's exciting. It's intense. It feels like, like a well-made cop thriller. And then when you get to like scenes of Leonardo DiCaprio running across rooftops and scurrying around trying to get like a signal for his phone and just struggling to get in contact with his daughter, it turns into kind of a very comical cat-mouse chase where you have no idea where it's going. And it's just, it's very thrilling. It's exciting. And it's the type of film that we need right now at this moment that I think is going to encapsulate so much of both this year and this decade. And I think that Paul Thomas Anderson, without directly pointing out the targets, has captured the right vibe and how we're going to look back on this era where we're kind of seeing like this bigger fight for rights in our life. So yeah, it is very much a highly political film, and it's not afraid to show some teeth. So, and that's exactly what I wanted out of a type of film like this. So yeah, one battle after another. it's a damn great film, and I think it's definitely going to be on my list for the best movies of the year, and definitely a top contender for the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie ever made. So, One Battle After Another will be playing in theaters this weekend. Do not miss it. I will leave the alerts on here while I go look at the chat here. All right, let's see. Dawn C says, hang on, let me make the chat box a little bigger here. There we go. Can't wait to watch One Battle After Another at the cinema today. Oh, you go see it with the crowd. You will love it. Yep, that's why I'm recommending this weekend to see it. Also saw in IMAX too. Pretty damn good in IMAX, especially for Paul Thomas Anderson having so many different types of shots. Like he has helicopter shots, he has handheld shots, like long shots, like especially during chase sequences. Especially there's a great chase towards the end of the film that goes over rolling hills, and there's great tension in just watching the cars go up and down the hills with like the camera on like the bottom of the car that just kind of like hugs the road. Just, it's perfectly tense. I cannot say enough good things about this film. I'm struggling to like, I don't even want to reveal the great punchline of like the little fascist underground movement they have in the film, just because the punchline is so great. So yeah, go see it so we can talk about it. Let's see. KX Jana says, "What's up?" Yeah, doing good. Out of curiosity, are you familiar with a progressive metal band called Queen Syke? I saw them perform at the State Fair last month, and it was amazing. I have not, but I'll have to look into them. I'm not as big into metal. Not opposed to it, but I'm not as familiar, so I'll give it a shot. Club Kasabe says One Battle After Another is 10 out of 10. It for sure is. It is. Hey, Mark, going good scored. Spyro says 4.5 on Letterboxd. Yeah, I was debating 4.5 or 5, but the more I thought about it, the more I loved the movie. So it's definitely a 5. So right now, it's like a top contender. I think it's just edging out Sinners right now. But again, we're very early in the year. For awards films, so we'll have to see. It could change. It could very well change. But I'm glad we got the film now, as opposed to October's gonna be tons of stuff coming out. Like we've got what do we got? We got Smashing Machine, we got Begonia, we've got After the Hunt. I think we've got. No, I think Frankenstein's like in November, so we got that coming up. But there's a ton. There's a Zoe Chow film coming out, Hamnet. We have a Daniel Day-Lewis film coming out. So much. So I'm glad that we got a Paul Thomas Anderson movie early. Scorn says, can't remember if I mentioned this, but I loved The Long Walk. You did. And yeah, I haven't been able to stop thinking about The Long Walk either. I'm still reading the book. I'm about a quarter of a way through it. And yeah, y'all weren't lying. The book really is that good. It is so damn good. Let's see. Dalbert Tran says, I'm so fucking excited for One Battle After Another. The tone is right up my alley. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you want your films to have like some political bite in them and don't want them to be safe, yeah, One Battle After Another you'll love. And want some humor in there, too. Like, just, oh my god, the levity. Wow, this is reference to Battle of Algiers. I should probably leave this live stream to know less about the movie before I watch it, but also it was really cool here. Yeah, and I haven't even divulged everything that happens in the film. I've struggled to. It's hard to talk about the film and not just talk about like the twist after twist after twist that happens with the unexpected nature of the characters. That's why I tried to keep it a little bit vague, to not reveal everything that happens to like Tiona Taylor and Leonardo DiCaprio's character, but it's very unpredictable. It is very much one of those films I would recommend going cold into if you can. It's kind of hard because, you know, there's a lot of great talent in this film that you want to see the trailer and you want to know about it. So I doubt it's going to surprise everyone that I like the film, but the fact that I love the film and that it might be my favorite PTA, maybe the best of the year, I think that's that might be all you need to hear. I'm sure when I post the review in the videos, it's a lot of people are just going to watch like the first few seconds and they're just going to be like, okay, got it. I'm off to the theater. And then hopefully they'll come back and watch the rest of the review. Let's see, Talbert Dan. Grippers are a perfect example of a silly name for a fire group. Yep, exactly. Paul Thomas Anderson gets that perfectly in the film. Without directly pointing out any of those real fascist groups, he gets the tone just right with them. Anti-fascist measures and a lot of guns and shootouts got me sold. Oh yeah, especially if like I said, like the film starts with them already radicalized. It doesn't begin with like, oh, we had like a perfect neoliberal life, and then everything went awry with when we elected the Republicans, and now we became radicals. Like, no, you can understand. Like, if they show you just like these radicals from the start, you could, I get it. I know what they're doing. Let's see, Scorn says, let's not forget the best October release, Deathstalker. Yes, I am still in talks to see if I can get a screener for Deathstalker. They are Shout is trying to promote the film, so I am trying to see if I can get an early screener yet. I haven't gotten it yet, but it's a little early, so hopefully come sometime in October I will get a screener for it, because I am excited for it. I think I actually have the somewhere in my old box of stuff here, but I do actually have the Deathstalker 4-pack. That was like the not the Corman, but like the B-movie DVD collection type deal. Let's see, Extriana says it's pronounced Queensryche. Okay. Pronounced Queensryche, written S-R-I-C-C. Okay. Alright, I'll check them out. Alright. So, let us get to the next film here. What was I going to review? Oh, yes. Him. Alright. Now we take a massive swing in quality here. Alright. I only have the first two Deathstalkers. And the MST3 gave it. That's right. That's right. I forgot. Mystery Science Theater did that too, didn't they? Oh man, I might have to track down that DVD now, because I remember liking that episode. All right. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Shrink the screen. And here we go with a review of Him in 3, 2, 1. So Him is a surreal horror film about how hard it is to be a football player, and how dehumanizing it can be to go through that type of status. And here's the thing. I think a film like this could be a great idea for a kind of like weird, surreal type of like horror film that delves into the like the bizarre social aspects of celebrity status, and and putting your body through the ringer of trying to become a physical athlete. There is a lot to explore with that topic, and how football players will often destroy their bodies and go to the extra length to be like the best player out there, and and basically embrace like the celebrity and godlike status that come with it, but also recognize how you're essentially kind of like selling your soul more or less for a chance at greatness. I think that's a great idea for a film to start. But the problem with Justin Tipping's film here is that it really only finds kind of like one thing to say about football, and then just kind of gets lost in its kind of nightmarish quality of trying to depict the horrors of putting your body and your career through all that pain and struggle, which you think will land you success, and ultimately just kind of drains you. It's like, that's a good idea, but it's the same idea beating its head against the wall so many times that it's just hoping that you'll be impressed with like the blood splatter that it leaves on the bricks, as opposed to saying anything more with the idea. Because there is a great start to the film. I love how the central character of Cam, played by Tyreek Withers, is desiring to become the greatest of all time. He wants to be the best football player out there, and his mentor is Isaiah White, played by Marlon Wayans. He plays for a team called the San Antonio Saviors, and Cam has spent his whole life idolizing this dude and basically wants to take that throne. He wants to say, I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be him. I'm gonna be the GOAT. That's gonna be me someday. And he rises up in the ranks of his career. He's, everything is going right for him. And then he gets a blow to the back of the head and he gets some stitches. Now, it's never quite revealed who did this. It's kept like a little bit of a mystery. But after this happens, everything kind of starts to work for Cam. Like, he gets invited to Isaiah White's little bizarre desert compound for a week of football training to see if, he has what it takes to be signed on to the Saviors. Okay, it's like, okay, that's a great horror setup because, he arrives at this strange compound with all these strange rooms that look out of like something like a Panos Cosmatos type of film. And Marlon Wayans, he does a good job playing a fairly sinister character who always feels like a little bit of an enigma. The way that he kind of like cackles and tries to teach Cam these various lessons that are rather unpredictable. Like at one point, like football practice turns into more of a brutal ritual where like people are like savagely beaten. And you've probably seen this in the trailers. It's a little bit of this has been revealed, but not much more is divulged besides that. The film kind of just becomes like a series of vignettes that are all mostly saying the same thing. Like each day is set up as like teaching a different lesson, but it's mostly just finding a different aspect to highlight a dehumanizing element of football, and not in a very clever way, just kind of in a, doesn't this look a little odd and spooky type of way, without saying much else besides that. Like, the football practice ends up with somebody getting footballs to the face. Another practice ends up with someone, having their face punched in and, lying on the ground in agony, and Cam realizing like, this is what you have to do to get ahead. And there's other creepier aspects like, just in general, like White is a very creepy character. The way that he kind of like looks over Cam's body, the way that he struts his ego around him, the way that he will go immediately from like screaming at him to making like cute little sounds and booping him on the nose. I think this is like a good role for Marlon Wayans if it was saying something more, but it just keeps repeating the same idea over and over again to the point where you're just like, okay, I get it. Yes. Football is dehumanizing. It takes a lot out of you. And it's not worth it. And even the film is pretty much building up to that thesis. And while you're waiting for it to get to that inevitable moment where Cam ultimately just turns away from this dehumanizing and, framed to be a little bit more of a satanic lifestyle, it ultimately ends up saying nothing, and it ends up wasting a lot of potential in this film. Like you have Julia Fox playing White's social media influencer of a wife, and there isn't much done with her aside from just her seducing Cam and making punchlines about her series of vibrators that she's trying to promote. You have Tim Heidecker as Cam's manager, but aside from like Heidecker's usual like blustering and angry comedic shouting and like his usual like scummy nature, there isn't much more to him than that. It just kind of feels like Tim Heidecker on autopilot. And even Jim Jeffries, who you think would be probably the most interesting character here as Marco, who is Isaiah's personal doctor, you would think that because he more or less tries to warn Cam about this lifestyle, but he doesn't really do much with it. It's mostly just kind of like little clues here and there, such as writing "get out" on one of the syringes and literally saying "run" in between one of the ceremonies that they go through with, grooming Cam as a football player. So again, like I said, it's just saying the same thing over and over again, and it just becomes a mess in doing this. It doesn't really feel like the vignettes are building anything. It just feels like all these exercises in nightmarish sports-themed horror to highlight all these weird aspects, and then just not building anything. Like there are clearly exercises and great set design here, and creepy tones, but there's never any momentum to this film. It's not building up any like social commentary muscle in between any of this. It's just saying the same thing over and over and over, that by the time you get to the big finale here, which is definitely like the big set piece they were promoting, where, you know, Cam's signing of the contract is on this football field with a bunch of weirdos dressed in pig masks and a pentagram in the center and faceless cheerleaders, and there's a weird ritual. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Anything else you want to say? No. And the film ultimately doesn't. It feels like wasted potential here. It feels like they built up all these great sets and gave, you know, Withers and Wayans, you know, a role that they could. The pressure, I didn't expect them to just literally end it on a pentagram with a satanic ceremony that just it becomes like such an abstraction with everything that it tries to say here. Like, it clearly wants to be stylish with wanting to say something about the dehumanizing aspects of football, but in its attempt to kind of like hammer home its points and make it just a stylish nightmare, it just ends up becoming a nightmare that understands that it is a nightmare and just tries to do creepy stuff as it keeps bludgeoning the same message into the point where it ends up saying nothing. It just becomes like a stylish mash of slop that looks good but says nothing, coming off more like a Nike commercial than being critical of anything that athletes would have to go through to get that Nike sponsorship deal. So yeah, this was a very disappointing film, because like there is a story to be told about what football does to men and how, you know, it can tap into like deep psychological and physical pain. That stuff is worth exploring. But this is not the film that explores that. So yeah, this was a really big disappointment. So if you do want to see him, I think it'll be in theaters for one more weekend, but I wouldn't expect it to go further than that. One of those bonk, did you get the point yet? Yep. It's man, I almost kind of want to go back and apologize to the film what was that film from Aronofsky? Mother. Because I know, like, for those who weren't around for that film, back in the day, Aronofsky made this little film called Mother that was essentially, the whole film was just an allegory for the central character who's locked in a house being the Earth. And once you figure out the allegory, it becomes so blatant and on the nose that it doesn't it loosens the impacts. Like, if you can figure out what the film is saying immediately and you're just watching it go through the same motions, it's like, okay, I get it. Yes, this is what people do to Earth. It's like, yeah, we get it. It's anything else? No. But you know, that film actually did some pretty good performances, and at least it didn't have like such elaborate sets as him does. So it doesn't feel as lacking, you know. All right. Let's see here. Dalbertran says, I love how the biggest takeaway from him is that moviegoers are starting to understand the difference between Jordan Peele being the director and being the producer, and how that affects quality. Yeah, so this is a problem that a lot of people have had. They've looked at the film, and it's advertised like, oh, it's produced by Jordan Peele, and they forget the produced part. It's like, yeah, it's by his studio, Monkey Paw Studios, but they only saw like Jordan Peele's name without he directed it. He didn't. He produced it. It's weird though. I had one person say like, oh, it's, you know, I didn't like the fact that it was written or directed or produced by Marlon Wayans. Like, he didn't do any of the failure of the film to Peele on that part, in the same way. I mean, like, you know, you look at something like Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg has produced like hundreds of films. Like, if Transformers sucks, do you blame Steven Spielberg for that, since he was the producer? Because they did advertise his name, you know. Okay. All right. We'll get to the last film here of Twinless. right, let me get the notes up here. Okay, and now to change of pace, let's talk about a little small film called Twinless. Oh, hang on, I gotta take a breath and some water. All right. I also got a few more drop frames. I gotta check on that. Thankfully, it's not the whole stream. All right. Okay, here we go with the review of Twinless. In 3, 2, and 1. So Twinless is a romantic comedy, or romantic dramedy rather, written and directed by James Sweeney, who plays the role of Dennis in this film. And Dennis is an insecure guy who just, he isn't comfortable with himself, that he wants to find ways to lie, if only to just have something to look forward to in his life. And there's a lot of problems that Dennis has, specifically with addressing his former lover of Rocky. Rocky, played by Dylan O'Brien, is a man who Dennis connects with immediately. As they show their relationship, they immediately like hook up well. Like they have a very passionate night of sex. And while they're getting into the mood, while they're like undressing each other and like getting into the act, they talk about their interests. Little weird that like one of their interests is like they've watched every Mary-Kate and Ashley movie, but you know, that's their weird jam. But yeah, it's very, very passionate, very sexy, very sweet. But of course, you know, their relationship goes a little bit awry and Dennis just feels a bit betrayed. And unfortunately, their relationship kind of ends where Dennis approaches Rocky and tries to, you know, talk with him about how like their relationship fell apart. But before he can do that, Rocky is killed in a car accident. So Dennis kind of attends the funeral, but he can't quite bring himself to, you know, fully come out as like, you know, having a relationship with Rocky, especially when he realizes that Rocky has a twin brother played by, he's played by Dylan O'Brien, but his name is Roman. And Roman is very different from Rocky. Like for starters, Roman isn't gay. He's very much a hothead. He has fights with his mother, and he's just he doesn't seem like the type of guy that Dennis would be into. But because Dennis is still hasn't gotten over Rocky, still lusting after him, he wants to try to find a way to just have some piece of Rocky back in his life, and so he starts obsessing over the twin of Roman, and he's not quite sure how to reveal the truth to Roman, and it just kind of like spirals into like this big ball of lies that eventually comes apart as Dennis just starts, you know, breaking down and coming to like the tearful realization that he's not going to have everything he wants and that he needs to kind of let go. Otherwise, he's just going to keep making lie after lie after lie. Which is kind of sad because like Dennis and Roman do seem to genuinely connect on a level of friendship that does seem to build up pretty well. And you would hope that it was just stick as a friendship, but also like, you know, Dennis can't help himself. He just wants more of that relationship that he feels like he'll never get back again. And there's something very sweet and a little bit terrifying about that as well. And I think like Dennis kind of realizes that too. Like he's not trying to be that creepy, but also there's a part of him that just can't help himself, that he just has to lie and just keep spinning as many stories as he can, if only to find some validation. Like at one point he is found out by somebody at one point and basically confesses like, look, just let me have this. I have nothing. Let me just keep lying so that I have something in my life to look forward to. So it does get pretty emotional, pretty tearful. But also just there's some genuine moments of connection. Like Dennis and Roman both connect over their love of The Sims, which I thought was pretty cute. And at one point they do go to a Halloween party dressed up as Sims characters, and they actually do speak they do speak in Simlish at one point, if you were wondering about that, just because they advertise the little the little Sims mood diamonds, whatever you want to call them, on the top of their heads. So There's a lot that I like about this film. I think there are some passages that I feel are a little bit too awkward here, that it becomes a little tricky to identify with Dennis, but I do think it comes together by the end of the film. You do kind of like him a bit more once he lets the truth come out in the open. I will say, I think the most fascinating thing about this film is James Sweeney's direction here, which is just, it's mesmerizing. Like, there's scenes where there's like a mirror shot that has like overlapping scenes of Dennis on the phone, where he's just trying to get through and trying to leave messages and try to come to terms with his own grief. There's a lot of great split shot scenes where, you have like the way the characters would talk over the phone, that just have these effortless transitions, like the way that Dennis calls up Roman while Roman is in bed with a girl, and the way that the screen divides between the two and how there's like a disconnect that is felt. It's so beautiful the way that it looks. Not to mention, there's a great scene at the Halloween party they go to that shows their different perspectives during the party, and the way that it just kind of seamlessly transitions the two shots together. I think for one, it perfectly suits like the theme of the film about like the duality of life, and how when you don't start noticing, when you start noticing twins, that they kind of seem to be everywhere, especially since like Dennis kind of infiltrates this group of people who have twins to try to get a better idea of how to of how to connect with someone like Roman. So it's a friendship that you almost kind of wish would be a friendship, but it just it becomes pretty anxiety inducing at one point, because at one point when Roman is hooking up with a girl, Dennis tags along for the date, and he's trying to maintain all the lives, especially between like Roman and his date. He set up two different types of lives, so he tries to connect the dots while they're going through like this light exhibit of all these different like dazzling mirror displays, and just like the reflections and the light, just everything that is set up here. It looks gorgeous. Like thematically, I think it ties in decently to the twin angle, but it's just like a good looking film, and I think that makes a lot of the emotional aspects a lot more intriguing and fascinating, because you're curious to see where they go next and how the film will end up being shot, especially for taking the non-linear route to kind of present more of a complete picture of what Dennis and Roman would see in this type of scenario. It's a fairly unorthodox romantic dramedy that I think mostly works, and I think a big part of what makes that type of film work is James Sweeney's direction here. I love what he does with the editing and the camera work here, that I'm really excited to see what he'll do next. So yeah, Twinless is a pretty damn good dramedy, pretty damn good romantic dramedy about twins and falling in love and grief. So that's Twinless. It should be playing in a few small theaters right now, if you can catch it. But it should be on. I think it's popping up on digital right now, so you can check that out as well. All right. Well, there we go. We got through 3 films. 3 great films. All right. Quick recap on the films we reviewed on today's stream. Reviewed One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson's wild action political thriller and comedy, based on a Thomas Pynchon novel, and it definitely does have that Pynchon vibe. Great performances by Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Tiana Taylor, Regina Hall. Great ensemble. Benicio del Toro. I could go on. Fantastic twist, great offbeat nature, very poignant picture. Expect this to be on a lot of top 10 lists at the end of the year. Go see it when you can. I also reviewed Him, the surreal sports horror about the dehumanizing aspects of having a football career and going through that training. Great idea for a horror film, and although it's very stylish, it's ultimately in service of just repeating the same message over and over, and doesn't really feel like it's building on anything all that substantial in what feels like a series of bizarre Nike commercials. And I reviewed Twinless, an offbeat romantic dramedy about one man trying to reconnect with his ex-lover's twin in hopes of recapturing some of that romantic magic. Very awkward at times, but brilliantly staged, and James Sweeney's direction is gorgeous. It's worth watching just for how it's shot and edited alone. So among all those films, Twinless, I would say definitely see if you can, but One Battle After Another is going to be in theaters this weekend. That is the one you should check out. Set aside some time to see it. You will not regret it. It's currently one of my favorite films of the year. So, if you want to make sure that other people know to go see One Battle After Another so that it doesn't get lost when we get into October, be sure to like this video. That way more people will know about it. And if you want to stay up to date on more of the latest films from other acclaimed directors that are coming up this year, like we have, what do we have? Zoe Chow, we have Luca Guadagnino, we have a Safdie film, we have Guillermo del Toro film, we have a Rian Johnson film, we have a Yorgos Lanthimos film. We have so much good stuff coming up this fall, and you don't want to miss any of it. So be sure that you subscribe to this channel so you're kept up to date on the latest films, which I'll be here covering every single one of them as best as I can. I'll see how much I can fit in a stream. So yeah. Be sure to check all that out, and also be sure to check out my Patreon as well, where I am currently writing a book on the history of banned movies. Be sure to check that out, because once I finish that book, you will get a physical copy if you're on the $15 tier. And if you just want a digital copy, I have that on the $3 tier as well. And you'll also get access to early videos, and some videos, some unused audio from some essays that I didn't feel were quite perfect. So you can find that up there as well. So yeah, I will be back in 2 weeks where we will be reviewing The Smashing Machine, the latest film from Dwayne Johnson that doesn't look like every other Dwayne Johnson film. I'll also be reviewing, what else may I be? Roofman, with Channing Tatum, based on the true story of a man inside a Toys R Us. And we'll also be reviewing Eleanor the Great, and maybe a few other films. I'll see what else I can sneak in there. So, yeah, until next time, yeah. See you in October, everybody.